Hey there, my name's Lee. I'm a physiotherapist and a PhD candidate. Welcome to my Blackboard, where I hope to share with you some of the interesting things that I'm learning as part of my research journey. Today we're going to be learning about something that I often share with my patients, and the reason why I share this with them is that I think it provides a really non-threatening understanding of pain. That is, I want to talk about the difference between your pain threshold and your damage threshold. Now, people often assume that when they experience pain, it's an indication that something is being damaged in their body. But we know from the research, and we quite clearly know this, that this is not always the case. By the end of this video, I want you guys to go away with these 3 key points. The first key point is that your pain threshold does not always equal your damage threshold. So these things are not always the same. The second key point is that pain is a protective experience. The third key point is that our pain thresholds are dynamic and always changing. Okay, so point number 1, your pain threshold does not always equal your damage threshold. To demonstrate this point, I want you to grab onto your index finger and just bend it back until the point where that stretching feeling gets painful. That point where it starts to be painful is your pain threshold. And now clearly you're not damaging anything here. If you kept going, kept wrenching it back to the point where your tissues in your finger were no longer able to counter the force being applied to it, then you've reached your damage threshold. Notice that the pain comes on long before you've actually damaged anything. Okay, so let's draw this up as a graph. So on the y-axis here, we have load. The further up you go, the more load that's going through the tissues. Okay, and over here, we're going to draw a box. And this box represents a movement that you can perform with your body. Right, so there's a point at which that movement becomes painful, right? And that is what we call your pain threshold. And then there's a point in which that movement goes too far and causes tissue damage, and that's what we call the damage threshold. That's just up here. For this example, we'll use the movement of spinal extension, and that's when you move your spine into an extended position like so. Imagine that you're lying on the floor and you lift your chest into an extended position like this. Now, some people may feel a bit of pain or discomfort in their lower back during a movement like this. In this instant, they've gone beyond the pain threshold, right? But importantly, even though they're experiencing pain, they haven't gone to the point of damaging themselves. If you really push it and your body isn't conditioned for it, you might cause an injury to your back in which you've gone beyond the damage threshold. As a side note, it could only be a very minor injury, but still feel like something major has happened. As an example, think of a paper cut. It's only a tiny little cut in the skin, but that thing can be really, really painful. So as you can see here, there's this large protective buffer that helps alert you to any potential danger in your body before anything bad actually happens. Which brings me to my second point. Pain is something we experience when our whole system predicts that it needs to engage in some kind of protective behavior. That is, we experience pain when our body decides that we need pain to protect ourselves from some kind of physical threat to us. Could you imagine if we only ever experienced pain at the point in which we actually damaged ourselves? Now that would be a highly inefficient system. It's much better for our system to be able to predict and adapt to potentially harmful situations than it is to deal with actual damage after the fact. In this way, pain is actually a really useful thing that we have. In fact, some people are born with a condition called congenital insensitivity to pain, in which they've never experienced and can never experience pain. Now, tragically, these people often perish in childhood or early adulthood because they don't have this vital protective function. So, the degree to which we experience pain is dependent upon our bodily system's perceived need to protect the body. This brings me to my third and final point, and that is that our pain thresholds are dynamic and always changing. Sometimes only a very small amount of loading is perceived to be threatening, and at other times quite a lot of loading is required to signal the alarm. Now, let's say that you've been painting the house. You spend the whole day in that extended position and you haven't done anything like this for a while. You wake up the next morning, hit your alarm, go to get out of bed, and your back is very sore. In this instance, even very small movements of your back, things that aren't really dangerous at all, might be really painful. Let's go back to the graph. Let's draw another box. And we'll say that this is pre-painting and post-painting. Post-painting, the pain thresholds have come down significantly to the point where only a small amount of loading is painful. You might also have a very slight lowering of the damage threshold, but let's be realistic, you're not going to damage your back that much by doing some painting. Remember the example of how painful a paper cut can be, even though there's only a small amount of damage? This situation is probably pretty similar. I think the important thing to note here is that even if the movement is painful in this situation, you're still not likely to be causing any damage to your body, right? There's this protective buffer that's preventing you from pushing things too hard. We've all had the experience of walking through a spider web. What you notice is that for a period of time following it, it feels like every itch and sensation on the surface of your skin is a spider crawling on your body. For a period of time, it's as if your spider threshold has been lowered. When it comes to pain, in the majority of pains, over time, these pain thresholds return back to a normal level, and the experience of pain subsides. But what happens when pain persists? Many researchers believe that the persistence of pain is due to these pain thresholds never returning to a normal baseline. Persistent pain is characterized by pain persisting beyond what we would consider to be normal tissue healing times. To go back to the spider example, it's like walking through a spider web and then maintaining the expectation that you've got spiders on you for way longer than necessary, perhaps even the rest of your life. Now, no one's going to do this. Eventually, our spider senses stop tingling and those thresholds return back up to a normal baseline. But what about pain? The society that we live in is full of information that depicts pain as something that is catastrophic, potentially a life-disabling phenomenon. You only have to attend one manual handling course to feel like your back is something that's easy to harm, but hard to heal. We may even receive various scans to explore inside the body to see what might be happening in there. And most of the time, these scans show up abnormalities. But what's not talked about is that these abnormalities are often found in people who don't have pain, too. There's actually a little bit of a push in primary care at the moment to stop sending people for unnecessary scans, as it might actually make the outcome worse rather than better, given the kinds of representations people are given of their problem with this kind of imaging technology. Importantly, I don't think that this is some kind of a mind over matter thing. If you think about the example of the spiders, you might know straight away after you've walked through the spider web that you don't have a spider on you, right? You might be able to rationalize that, but you still can't help but feel spiders all over your body. There's something deeper going on here, something really primal, and something that means that we can't just think our way out of these protective responses, such as pain. That doesn't mean I don't think that it's possible for people with persistent pain to restore their pain to a normal level. I just think that it involves finding broad strategies that the person can use to restore confidence in movement and try to get these protective systems under control. This video isn't about finding those strategies, but I do think that they exist, and it might be worth finding somebody who can guide you, if you have persistent pain, in finding the strategies that work best for you. Okay, so to summarize today, we learned that your pain threshold is not the same as your damage threshold, and in fact we usually experience pain well before any tissue damage has occurred. This difference is likely due to the fact that our pain system has evolved to protect us, and it would be doing a pretty shoddy job if we only experienced pain at the point at which we actually caused some damage. Lastly, these pain thresholds are always changing based on a whole wide range of factors, conscious and non-conscious, that determine our perceived need to protect our body. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. Thanks for joining me at the Blackboard, and until next time, keep calm and keep moving.